Well, hello everybody, it's Mr. Boyce here, and today we're going to look at Checking Out the History by John Agard. As always, it's good to start with a little bit of context. So, John Agard is actually from British Guiana. He was born in 1949. Officially it's in the Caribbean, but it's not an island, it's on the South American coast. He moved here in the late 1970s. It was a time when he would have endured a lot of racism. Especially because he was mixed race, and back then it would have been referred to as half caste. There's a fantastic poem he wrote called Half Caste, so feel free to look that up online. It deserves it. In this poem he challenges traditions in his poetry, historical traditions but also poetic traditions, and he uses humour to deal with serious issues. Now here's a little map to show where Guyana is. It's down in the bottom right hand corner. This is what the countryside looks like, and the average town in Guyana would look like this. It looks sort of idyllic, doesn't it? But just like most of the Caribbean and South America, it's poverty stricken. So he would have escaped there in the 70s for work really, and to get some money. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this, so you can pause the video. I'd really like you to do a bit of research so you know exactly who all these figures are. And here are some more to have a look at. Now, John Agard uses phonetic spelling and dialect words, so I thought I'd quickly explain what they are. Phonetic spelling is where words are written to create an accent. So, for example, most of us are from South London, and we would maybe lean against the wall, but actually sometimes we'll say we'll lean against the wall, and that's how you would write that. We look out of a window on a bright summer's day, but sometimes we're looking out of windows, aren't we? Yes, we are. And when we're thirsty, we should be drinking water, but we very often say, "Can I have a glass of water? I'm thirsty." Dialect words, we have our own as well. So if we're happy, we might say we're chuffed. If we're unhappy, we'll say we're gutted. In Scotland, they have a beautiful dialect word called scunnered, which means that you're annoyed or disgusted by something or someone. And he uses dialect words and phonetic spelling throughout the poem. Now, I would read this poem to you, but I'd then be arrested for crimes against the Caribbean. So we're going to look at John Agard reading it. So bear with me while I click to the link. Oh, it's taking a while, isn't it? And here we go. Right.
Them tell me what they want to tell me. Bandage up me eye with me own history. Blind me to my own identity. Them tell me about 1066 and all that. Them tell me about Dick Whittington and he cat. But to St. Louis, but you know, them never tell me about that. Toussaint, a slave with vision. Lick back, Napoleon, battalion, and first Black Republic born. Toussaint, the thorn to the French. Toussaint, the beacon of the Haitian Revolution. Them tell me about the man who discovered the balloon and the cow jump over the moon. Them tell me the dish run away with the spoon, but them never tell me about Nanny the maroon. Nanny, seafar woman of mountain dream, fire woman, struggle, hopeful stream to freedom river. Them tell me about Lord Nelson and Waterloo, but them never tell me about Shagga the Great Zulu. Them tell me about Columbus and 1492, but what happened to the Carib and the Arawak too? Them tell me about Florence Nightingale and she lamp, and how Robin Hood used to camp. Them tell me old King Cole was a merry old soul, but them never tell me about Mary Seacole. From Jamaica, she traveled far To the Crimean War, she volunteered to go, even when the British said no. She braved the Russian snow, a healing star among the wounded, a yellow sunrise to the dying. Them tell me what they want to tell me. But now I checking out me own history. I carving out me identity.
Right, so beautifully read. I think you get a sense of the real musicality of the poem. Obviously it helps because he sings it in places. But yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do that justice. So, we're going to look at the poem stanza by stanza. Obviously you can pause whenever you need to. So them means they. It refers to the British white men that largely control what's taught in schools. If we're thinking about making it really contemporary, it would have been Michael Gove and the fact that he decided to abandon American literature and essentially changed the curriculum for good. Got rid of coursework in English, for instance. It's one white man affecting everybody in education. Now, we get into the second stanza and we begin to get some imagery. So, bandage up me eye with my own history. It's as if he's been blinded to his own past. And the use of the be here is alliterative, but it's also what we call plosive. B's and P's are plosive and often reflect anger. He does not use standard English when he talks about his own past or the historical figures. And this sort of challenges tradition. Not just the tradition of white history, but also the tradition of, I guess, white poetry. All through the poem, juxtaposition is used. So, for instance, here we have the ridiculous notion of Dick Whittington. He was a real mayor, to be honest, but he didn't have a talking cat, compared to Toussaint Louverture, who was a true historical figure, fighting for black independence on Haiti. Now, for an upper-level contextual point, Haiti has suffered ever since. It's still one of the most poverty-stricken nations on earth. It's as if they were punished for wanting their own freedom and independence. Here's a little explanation that John Agard gives us. And again, it's not traditional form. So it's shorter. There's no punctuation. And I guess that does challenge white tradition, really. You may have noticed that there's rhyme occasionally used, and this reflects the musicality of the Caribbean culture. And you'll notice at the end of this verse, Toussaint's referred to as a beacon. Now, a beacon is officially a fire that was lit to send a message, and I think at least 3 of the historical figures here are linked to light. So we have Toussaint as a beacon, and later on we have Mary Seacole described and linked to the sun rising. Now, Nanny de Maroon is someone I only learnt about recently. She was a true figure who freed the slaves. Now, it's astonishing to think, as he says, that we'd learn about cows jumping over the moon, but we wouldn't learn about her. And so again, here's juxtaposition and contrast. And a certain amount of anger, even though it is humorous, there is a little bit of resentment throughout this poem. Now, she's referred to with this lovely metaphor as a sea-far woman of mountain dream. And again, she's linked to fire, a fire woman. And fire obviously brings hope, and it brings warmth. So it might be worth noting that down as a quote to remember. Again, we have some juxtaposition here. We've all seen Nelson's column. We might have been to Waterloo. These are famous British historical figures, but we don't really know about Shaka. Now, Shaka was as the leader of the Zulu Empire in South Africa, a huge empire that we really didn't know about. Likewise, we believe that Columbus discovered America, which is ridiculous, because actually people like the Caribs and the Arawaks were already there, and in fact they were killed off by the Spanish invaders. Now, again, most of us know about Florence Nightingale. She's fine. We don't dislike Florence Nightingale. But it's only recently that we learned about Mary Seacole. We learn, as John Agard says, about old King Cole. But Mary Seacole was an amazing woman. She was a true historical figure. Whereas Robin Hood, who's mentioned in this verse, as far as we know, he's fictional. But there have been countless films made about him. Now, Mary Seacole was from Jamaica. She was a black woman. And she volunteered in the Crimean War to help look after British soldiers. The irony was that the British didn't want her there because she was black. But she went anyway. And as you can see here, she's described as a healing star. Beautiful metaphor. And as a yellow sunrise. Again, that sense of light that's linked to these historical figures throughout the poem. And then we get to the last verse. Now, he's back to them tell me. That's that anger again. And as we now know, it's the teachers, the people in charge, the government that he's referring to. But now that he's learned about his past, he's learned about his black history, he can now carve out his own identity. Now, some people think that the carving out is quite aggressive. It means he's had to do it himself. It also links to maybe some of those beautiful statues you sometimes see in museums from African culture. It could link to that. So that's essentially the poem. Obviously you can go back and look and pause. I think I've told you some of the important quotes that I think you should remember. So a couple of things to remember about the poem in general. It does use two types of stanza. So when he's talking about British history, it tends to be more traditional and formal. But when he talks about his own history, it becomes much less formal and actually much more engaging. There's a lack of punctuation. He uses enjambment, he uses some lovely imagery. Always important to talk about structure when you write about poetry. Now, as far as the poem itself, what can we say about it in the end? So it is about reclaiming black identity. Remember, John Agard was a man who lived here in the 70s who had been taught nothing about his own history. It also makes us aware of the fact that we know very little about black history, so to a certain extent it's almost shaming us. It introduces the reader to famous black people, and I suppose it's a very important point, it reminds us that whoever controls the past, and in this case it's predominantly white people, they control the present. And it encourages us as the reader to maybe look back and rediscover our own history. So, hopefully that was useful. I think that's all I've got to say. Okay, bye.